Hello, welcome back to Mega Manga Monday. I am Jason Hahn, writer for Screen Rant and host of the Mega Manga Mondays podcast. Today, I've got a couple buddies with me to talk about some new exciting manga chapters we're very excited to talk about. But today's episode, we're going to focus on My Hero Academia, chapter 384, Chainsaw Man, chapter 124, and JuJutsu Kaisen, 218. Quite a few series we normally like to talk about are on break this week, but we still have plenty of opinions and stuff to talk about with these new chapters. But I, Jason Hahn, content creator, YouTuber, screenwriter, writer, all that good stuff. Am very excited. But enough about me. Let's go ahead and hear from our other buddies here. Ben, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm Ben. I'm also a writer for Screen Rant for the comics, anime, and manga sections. I'm also a YouTuber as well with my own channel, YGO from Zero. Check it out if you're interested in old formats of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. But I am a big fan of all the series that we're going to talk about today, so I'm excited to dive into them.
Absolutely. And we also have Carlyle today, buddy. How are you?
Hey, Carlyle. I'm another Screen Rant writer in the anime and manga department, and also an indie dev working on a visual novel called Elven Revenue Service. But I'm here to talk about My Hero Academia because, boy, this chapter has left a lot of wild implications just via cameo that must be discussed.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it because I thought it was an okay chapter. It definitely felt like it's setting a bunch of stuff up, but we'll dive right into it. This chapter, My Hero Academia's manga 384, titled "It's a Small World." Kind of centered on Gigimakia showing up. Last chapter, we got the whole backstory on what went down on the facility that was housing Gigimakia, and the blob villain returned, the one that took over Bakugo at the very beginning of the series, and apparently he was hiding inside Shizo, the brainwashing guy. But they were able to, conquer that issue and get Gigimakia to the fight against a very young All For One. So that's definitely heightening, but it was really interesting. We finally got to see or hear some of Gigimakia's personality throughout the entire series. He's just consistently been like, "Grr, brah, oh, look at that building, brah." Like that's pretty much the height of his personality we've gotten so far. But it was revealed that he's actually a very tortured soul. He's a very lonely guy, and he felt betrayed by All For One, just kind of ditching him and to do his own things. So it was kind of nice whenever they dive into a character that we didn't know much about. It'd be kind of like if Groot suddenly got a huge backstory and started to articulate himself. You're like, oh wow, I didn't know you thought that way, buddy.
I mean, in the comics, Groot has a bigger backstory than in the movies.
Yeah, you'll definitely be more more informed on all that than I would be. And there's the whole I think Marvel just did a whole series on Groot, a mini series sort of thing that I
They
haven't
did.
watched
I
yet.
mean, I didn't watch it, but
Yeah. Yeah, there's too many of those shows now. I don't have enough time for all the shows.
Yeah,
Just keep doing
unfortunately.
movies, Marvel. Speaking of superheroes, this new chapter just continues the onslaught of Mount Lady and Tsukio, or the
Tokoyami.
Dark Shadow Tokiomi. Thank you. And yeah, it really just centered on all that. We just got one page, little tease of Deku versus Shigaraki, which was an excellently drawn couple panels, but I'm excited for them to go back over there. But Carlisle, you seem to have some stuff to say about this chapter, man. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, the thing that really got my attention was the very last page, which is just full of cameos of people watching all across the world, and there are characters from each of the three movies in these panels, suggesting that all three movies are canon to the manga, which has some really wild implications, because that means that for example, Bakugo has canonically held One for All.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's a huge connection there, and something that might still play a big role in the story because
Yeah.
uh, I keep on thinking Bakugo is going to show up any minute now, still with a freshly sutured edge shot inside of him. Maybe still, I'm not sure. But as crummy as the Bakugo moment was in this arc, I am very excited to see him and Deku hopefully team up against something again. Will it be Shigaraki? We don't know. Will it be All for One getting here? That would take quite a lot of him to get through for that to happen. But yeah, canonically also, I keep thinking like I loved 2 out of the 3 of the movies. I'd say the third movie was probably the worst in my opinion, except for the final battle, which was just, it felt like the whole movie was made just to have Deku fight some guy with a reflectability. And seeing that in a D box where the seat like moves with you was one of the coolest experiences ever. Like seeing an anime action movie with the seat vibrating and stuff. Highly recommend it. Worth a $20 ticket. But yeah, I didn't notice that these were like cameos from the films. And now that I look at it, yeah, we're getting the 2 like siblings from the second movie.
Yep.
We're getting the girl from the first one who like designed the All Might Gauntlet. And really, it's just one of those things. The more you think about it, the more if they make those movies canon, like, oh, there's a lot to add. there's like the gauntlet that Deku could be using to help his strength. There's I don't know. We could go on and on with movie stuff on that, but yeah. What were some of your favorite cameos in there? And are there any implications that really stood out for you, Carlyle?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the Bakugo thing is the biggest one by a large margin. But yeah, you're right. There's Melissa Shield there. She made those gauntlets that Deku was. She made the ones that he's using, or at least the ones that he was using in the anime recently too.
Oh, okay.
So maybe she has better stuff too. Well, I don't know. They've been out of touch with the rest of the world for a little while at this point, so they haven't exactly been getting imports.
Right.
But yeah, we've got Salam, the hero from the third movie, one of the international heroes, and then Electro Plant over here on the left in London, apparently. So it's interesting. I think some of these other panels are just characters that we have seen intermittently throughout the series, just like random people like the Star Hair guy and stuff like that. But I'm not sure exactly where they all come from. But I wouldn't be surprised if almost all of these panels are callbacks of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Well, the ones of... Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Well, the one that got me the most was I forget his name, but the guy who like quit being a hero, the big bulky guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's there looking at his phone, and this is right after the whole talk about how the people on the battlefield chose to be there and stuff. And so maybe we're going to see him return. Maybe like he'll be inspired by this or something, or he'll show up after the battle and be like, you all inspired me and the other heroes who quit to come back or something like that.
Yeah. That would be good because since he had that construction worker kind of theme too, like I'm here to rebuild now,
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. I now I'm hoping that we see that.
Yeah, is actually I'm glad that you brought that up because that was one of my notes that this situation involving the press seems like the exact opposite situation of the Dobby like anti-hero speech. So I feel like I wrote it down articulately, so let me go ahead and just quote what I said. All the heroes that are fighting are like real deal heroes because it seems like they were tested and a lot of them quit. And that kind of like goes to what Dobby was saying is, hero society is a bunch of posers, wanting a comfy job and this sort of thing. And there's not really any real heroes out there. And this whole arc has just been proving him wrong. I mean, hell, he got proven wrong literally maybe 30 seconds after he delivered the speech. The anime just recently covered that arc very well, I might add. But I really enjoy how the manga is creating like an exact parallel situation where the press is getting involved now. They're just now like picking up on Deku's whole journey, which is kind of weird. But I really enjoy that they're finally giving him like the attention he's deserved the entire series, I thought. But the manga is just perfectly setting up a moment where the whole world is watching heroes being heroes and saving the day. And I love the line that the journalist even says is like, win or lose, people are going to know that fighting is still happening, that there's still people out there fighting for their futures. And it hit pretty hard. But for me personally, the hardest hitting moment of this chapter, as a content creator who's been desperately trying to get people to look at the stuff I've been working on for more than a year, that page of seeing the current views jump up from like 7,000 to 20,000 was so satisfying and felt really, really cool. Like, just because I feel like they're building up the desperation very well. I'd say this chapter actually did it better than most chapters have done recently, just because we know the stakes and what's going on with these villains, but getting the insight of how the rest of the world is like feeling about this current thing really, really heightened it for me. They're really, really pumping up these final. I guess we only have two big fights left, really. Well, there's bunch of several fights like with Dabi, Toga, and all that going around all for one right now. So I guess we have more than two fights, but you know what I mean. But yeah, those were two moments that I really enjoyed. And I think that this chapter did a great job of kind of broadening the scope of perspectives that are going on in the series right now. But let's see. Another bit about this chapter that I thought was really interesting was them mentioning that whenever the journalist was talking about Deku, they made a point to say that this is a full year after the sports festival. So kind of giving us an idea of how this timeline is working on My Hero Academia. I always thought it was, kind of strange. We're starting with all these students, freshmen who are like 13, 14 years old. And to hear that we've had a whole year pass since like the sports festival and stuff like that. Adds some pretty interesting hindsight to everything, I thought. So that was something I thought was kind of interesting. And probably the more we think about it, we could probably think of some other implications of, oh my God, okay, so they're sophomores now. And I really don't think we're going to be getting like a My Hero Academia Shippuden where they're suddenly like seniors, and maybe that'll be the final couple chapters, but hell, I'd love to see that. Just like focus on different characters or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. But
I mean, my biggest sort of wasted potential for this series, and this is just a me thing, but I really feel like it could have been paced in a way that like this whole thing did take place over 4 years.
yeah,
With like each arc just being, you could have paced it out so that certain things happened like second year, third year, all that stuff. You don't need to show every single thing that happens over the first year, because if you do that, then you're obviously going to escalate things too far to actually spread it out over 4. But they could have definitely, like, if Horikoshi had like just spaced it out a bit better, like I think we could have had this having taken place senior year. But that's my sort of biggest missed opportunity here, I think.
oh man, I couldn't agree more. And merchandising too. They could have sold like each year's version of the hero. Oh man, huge missed opportunity. um, but yeah, I think that that's definitely one issue that we've had, especially with these last few arcs, is just everything feels so rushed. Um, and to think that they've all healed from their horrendous battles throughout the entire series within a couple weeks before the next big terrible thing happens. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it could have been a lot more interesting, and especially if we would have gotten more time to focus on secondary and even tertiary characters. Then we'd be feeling a lot more towards them. I feel like whenever something happens, I'd say this arc has done a very good job of like giving almost everybody in the class like a moment. but those moments would have hit so much harder if we had spent more time with them leading up to it, I thought, throughout the series. But yeah, let me see if I've gotten any other notes. Let's see. But yeah, Ben, did you have any other thoughts on the chapter? I know we haven't heard your thoughts on My Hero Academia for a little bit. So I know last chapter we had a lot of stuff going on with the Gigi Makia and All for One kind of dynamic and stuff like that. Didn't know if you had any thoughts from the previous chapter that you had been holding on to.
Not really from the previous chapter that much, but I really liked this chapter. I mean, I've liked the last couple chapters. Like, basically, moving away from the Deku and Shigaraki fight, I like the series. And then when Deku gets reintroduced, I don't really like it as much in general. I'm just not the biggest fan of Deku as a character, because I feel like there's a lot of like sort of missed potential there. But that's just a personal gripe. I really like Gigantomachia, though. I think that like it's really cool to see that there's more to this guy than just like unbridled rage. And it's also interesting because I feel like, yeah, it's cool that Shinso sort of compares Gigantomachia and Deku. Like, it's not really like a firm comparison because he's just saying like Deku and this guy, are the only two to ever put up a fight against my brainwashing. But it's kind of neat because like the only way that Deku managed to break free of Shinso's brainwashing was just sort of having the One for All ghosts like step in and do it for him. Whereas Gigantomachia is doing it all on his own. So like Gigantomachia is really like the only character in the series to break free of Shinso's brainwashing through like his own volition, which is I think that's really cool.
It's interesting because he does have multiple quirks too. That is something that Gigantomachia and Deku have in common. I doubt that the spirits that may or may not be in Gigantomachia are helping him out, but
yeah, but there are tons of like parallels and interesting things between Gigantomachia and Deku that are like that. That sort of throwaway line makes you think, this actually is an interesting comparison.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like that.
Yeah, I agree, and it kind of adds a lot more depth to the character that I feel like there's so many characters we want more depth with in this series. I would have never have guessed it would have been Gigantomachia that we'd be getting more depth with. But a lot of the theories that we've come up with during this podcast for My Hero Academia is the whole issue of having multiple quirks and the quirks actually holding like the personality or remnants of the soul that had it before. So it would be very interesting if the end of the series that comes to fruition and All for One gets held back or whatever, and then we kind of go back to like wait Gigantomachia also has all these other voices inside of him too. Like I almost wonder if there's going to be more to do with that by the end of the series. I also don't know what a happy ending looks like for Gigantomachia.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they necessarily deserve a happy ending, or we'll get one. But like, just a conclusion to their character arc that has just been introduced in this chapter would be nice. It is kind of interesting how many like character arcs are almost getting artificially constructed in this final arc. But I'm honestly a fan of it. I don't really mind if suddenly Gigantomachia gets like a ton of backstory and is suddenly a character. It's fun. It's I feel like the best part of this final arc has been sort of Horikoshi making these sort of like wrap ups to character arcs that we never knew we wanted. So I'm here for more of it.
I would definitely be interested in exploring Gigantomachia's origins a little bit. How did he get into this situation in the first place? Because we've established several times, like he's a guy. He was a guy before he was Gigantomachia. He was not a Nomu. So how did he end up like this? That seems like something that would have been really interesting to do in Vigilantes or something. I'm almost surprised we didn't do it now.
Well, there's a theory that I've seen that Gigantomachia was actually like the original Red Riot. And I think,
man,
I think that would be really cool if that
Hell
actually
yeah.
gets confirmed or denied. It could just be fans reading too much into things. But like, given
They
how
love to do that.
Horikoshi's brought a lot of callbacks here that we never thought he'd follow up on into this final arc, maybe we'll see more of that.
I think that could potentially, because Kirishima is one of my favorite characters of the series. That has unfortunately only gotten one or two cool moments throughout the entire series, and he's one of the few characters I'd say that hasn't had like a big awesome moment in this arc. We got a little bit of him like protecting Shizo in this chapter, but for me, the pinnacle of his character was during the overhaul arc against the super powerful fister guy, for the lack of a better name. But I thought it'd be a great setup for them to have to fight again. But if Kirishima is able to withstand those hits without the help of Fat Gum, would just feel like the logical next step for his character. But revealing that Gigimakia is like the original Red Riot that he like inspired to be would be excellent. I think an excellent through line for Kirishima, like him having to somehow stand up against that, even though it wouldn't make any sense, even if Kirishima becomes even harder to take down. I still don't think he'd be able to stop a mountain-sized person. But hey, prove me wrong, Horikoshi. I would love to see that. But yeah, that's about all my notes on My Hero Academia 384. Carlyle, is there anything else about this chapter? Or is there? I'm curious to hear if there's any other like lingering plots for any of our main heroes or anything that you'd be very disappointed if we don't get in this arc, because I feel like we're about running out of plots to close up.
Yeah, we're definitely getting to the end of a lot of these plot threads that were going on, because you think back to this summer and we had 4 or 5 things that we were cutting between, and now we've narrowed it down to just we've got 2 important locations at this point. So it's definitely a lot smoother in terms of cutting back and forth between things. I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean,
Journalism.
I know whose character I want to see more of. I want to see more Mineta. Give me that Mineta character moment. You
We
coward.
gotta explain
Horikoshi.
what the hell he meant when he said he fell for Deku.
Yeah.
Now that
we
we've
need to know.
translated it 4 times and it hasn't explained anything.
Yeah, I think he's one character that's kind of fallen by the wayside, maybe on purpose.
Mineta's like Horikoshi's favorite member of Class A, apparently.
Really?
Or like he's the one where like Horikoshi said in like the extras for like the volumes, he said something like, Mineta is like me as a UA student. Like he's the one closest to me.
Seeing the way he draws some of his characters, that does not surprise me at all.
Yep.
I'd say one character that we have gotten very little updates on, and we still have like a very grisly fate foreshadowed for, is All Might. We haven't seen All Might for a very long time.
Oh, yeah, I meant that. I was thinking about that this weekend. It's been a long time since we've seen All Might. He's back at the headquarters, I think, but we've cut to the headquarters several times now, and we haven't seen him.
Yeah. And I'm also like really waiting to see the president of the school, or the principal of the school, like in action. I mean, the guy in charge of, one of the world's greatest like high school for superheroes and stuff like that. He's got to have some tricks up his sleeve. I would love to see him doing something, but he's just been the comedic mall rat, or little rat character or something like that. I don't remember his name at this point, but yeah, I think that we're due for that in the near future, hopefully. But yeah, I think that's everything I've got on My Hero Academia 384, and I guess we could ask, what do you guys hope will happen next? Do you want us to stick with the all for one fight, or I think we need to go resolve Dabi Toga stuff? I'm just anxious for more Deku Shigaraki stuff because I think Deku and Shigaraki are going to fight it out for a little bit. Maybe Deku will be on the back foot, and then Bakugo and other people start helping out too. But yeah, would love to get some more drama with All Might.
Yeah. I think in terms of the big fights and such that are going on, I definitely want to get back to Deku and Shigaraki as well. There's obviously a lot going on here, and we've been waiting for Shigaraki to sort of become himself again. So now that we're finally at that point,
Then we cut away.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think we'll go ahead and move on to Chainsaw Man. But Carlyle, thank you so much for your thoughts and opinions on My Hero Academia lately. Did you have any plugs or recommendations before you move out?
Recommendation for anybody who just wants some character stuff, mostly goofy character stuff for these My Hero Academia characters that sometimes don't get as much of the spotlight. Go read Team Up Missions. It's silly and weird, but it's got some good character moments in there too, so it's worth checking out.
Okay, excellent. And that's on the Shonen Jump app. I
Yep,
think the
they
last
just
time I
added
checked
the
it out.
new volume, so like 16 chapters. There's quite a bit over there. So.
Oh, very cool. Of the new volume, was there any like favorite characters that for you that got some more spotlight that you were excited to see?
Um, yeah, they had a sequel, little comic to the third film with Rhodey in it,
Oh,
which was pretty fun to see that character again. So would definitely recommend that one at the very least.
yeah, that's the guy with the little. Was it a
A little
bird?
bird, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that guy's ability was kind of strange. It's
Yeah, that's one where you got to wonder, like, what did that manifest later? Was he born with the little bird beside him? I don't know.
yeah, it's one of those things. Don't think about it too much. He just wakes up one morning, and is like, "What the hell is this bird? Oh, I guess it's my quirk. Okay, this is weird." Uh, It was almost like a Pokemon. And also Elven Revenue Service.
Yep.
Do you want to throw that Twitter handle out there?
Yeah, it's at Elven Revenue. Still, working on the same kind of things, but uh, hopefully it'll be up on Steam in the next couple months. That's the goal. So,
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. We'll go ahead and move into some Chainsaw Man, but look forward to talking to you next time.
yep. See ya.
Peace. All right. How you doing, Brett?
Chainsaw time.
It is time for the chainsaws. But yeah, we are talking Chainsaw Man, chapter 124. Title Soup. I have really been enjoying the last couple chapters of Chainsaw Man, getting more into like Asa's backstory and trauma. I just love how Fujimoto has been building up Denji's and Asa's character, and she just seems to be like the opposite of Denji consistently. Like most of part one, he just felt like a blank slate, and you eventually find out is because of some horrible trauma he experienced as a kid. While Asa seems to know what her issues are and doesn't know what to do about them, while Denji was consistently trying to figure out his issues and who he was. And with these terrible situations happening to Asa, it's kind of forcing her to, confront these issues and stuff like that. But with the appearance of, I believe we're just calling it the Falling Devil currently.
I think that's the name of it, like confirmed last chapter.
Yeah, I know that there was a bit where Yoru is kind of like trying to figure out which of the primal devils this might be. And it's just kind of a big deal. A primal devil showing up on Earth, which I don't know if that's something that has happened quite yet or confirmed.
The Darkness Devil showed up on Earth.
Oh, was it? Well, was it the full, or was it just somebody borrowing its power? I thought.
Well, through the borrowing, it manifested on Earth. I thought that was.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and then
you're
Makima
probably
showed
right.
up and killed it.
Yeah, yeah. And Makima Control Devil, I think, is probably a great example of, because I would say, I don't know if they flat out said that Control was a primal
I
devil, but
don't think control is a primal fear, because control comes from the introduction of society and interpersonal relationships, which is not really a primal. It's like the next sort of step of abstraction, right? But like a primal fear is like, falling, darkness, things that
Mhm.
an individual human ape wandering around is going to be afraid of back in the Stone Age.
I don't
So
know. I could argue like the fear of control could even go back to like the Day of Apes and stuff like that, because imagine like being an ape. Well, this kind of going far here, but like seeing a group of apes like being more organized than like your setup, you'd almost like have a fear and anxiety of that progress, of that sense of control.
but that
Maybe
but
I
that
might be
means
thinking too much.
that that's something that has happened once society has been introduced, right? Like the idea is that like the primal devils are things that come from just the instinctual fears of an animal, right? And an animal that is like in the wilderness, right? And the fear of control comes later, after other things have been established and humans have become more human and less animalistic. So,
No, good point.
yeah.
Uh, but well, yeah. It's getting to new heights of scariness in Chainsaw Man. Especially, I think a couple chapters ago we had Yoshida talking to the Famine Devil um, about some people taking some contracts with the Future Devil and learning that lots of people are about to start dying. Um, and I feel like the falling devil showing up was just the first part of that iceberg. I feel like,
Yeah.
um, but
Especially
but yeah,
given whatever, the falling devil brings the food to at the end of the chapter.
yeah,
I mean, that thing is still in hell, it seems like.
hmm
But, there's more interaction between these primal fears in the real world, it seems like. And I wouldn't be surprised if that like caterpillar like thing is stronger than the falling devil. Um, so
yeah,
very
yeah,
scary
or
stuff.
yeah. I almost wonder if maybe that's its like original body, maybe, and it's like just sending things out to feed itself. Could be. We don't know enough yet, but yeah, I really enjoyed the dynamic between Asa and Yoru in this chapter. It's kind of Yoru. Some people were taking it as like, oh, it's like Asa and Yoru's relationship building of them being closer and stuff like that. And it's just like, I don't know. I think Yoru is still just uh, doing what they need to do to keep their bodies safe. I don't really feel like we've gotten Yoru uh, or signs that Yoru is like legitimately caring about Asa. I feel like it's all just self preservation so far.
Yeah,
Um,
but I think the idea is that like Asa is telling Yoru that like she can't trust her,
mhm.
and like that sort of thing. In order to preserve herself, Yoru will open herself up a bit more to Asa, and then that might lead to sort of more than just the self-preservation relationship. But yeah,
Hopefully,
I do agree with you that I think that at this point, Yoru's just still kind of like, you're my body. I don't really care about you. I care about the body. Um, so yeah, but it's still fun to see. I really love Yoru and Asa's like relationship here. I think it's
mhm.
very unique, especially compared to part one. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something that I always sort of felt was kind of like missing in part one. It was like, man, Pochita's kind of cool, but Pochita's gone. It's just Benji.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like the anime made that dynamic even worse or more heartbreaking because they made Pochita so adorable and likable in the first episode, and then yeah, you don't get him anymore. It just makes I need to buy that pillow. I need to buy a Pochita pillow. The urge rises.
Mhm.
um, but yeah, the dynamic. We'll be talking Jujutsu Kaisen a little bit later, but I got to bring it up now. Just Yoru and Asa's relationship already feels warmer or more well established than like Sukuna and Itadori's relationship. Um, we have several mangas going on over the last few years that involve main character having some sort of devil or demon inside of them. And some series like Naruto sees them like mend that relationship and uh, become they both become more powerful because of it. And then you have series like Jujutsu Kaisen where there's just no redeemable qualities of the thing that's possessing them.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, the
and it,
relationship between Itadori and Sukuna is very much antagonistic. So
yes,
Sukuna doesn't want to make a relationship with Itadori. Sukuna just wants out,
yeah.
and to also torment Itadori into hopefully, a depressive state that Sukuna can then take over.
Yeah, Sukuna sucks. He's a dick.
Yeah, but that's what
I've
makes him so great.
yeah, absolutely. I haven't been feeling that towards Yoro though, and I almost feel like Fujimoto hasn't given us a lot of opportunities to like hate Yoro, and it's kind of it's kind of building up the idea of a will they won't they get along sort of situation. I mean, we've seen clearly in this series like Chainsaw Devil and Denji built up quite the bond and relationship, and the Chainsaw Devil is supposed to be like one of the most fearsome things ever. I mean, all the devils are even afraid of them. um, we still haven't quite gotten that explanation on why a chainsaw, which is something that's only existed for like the last 100 years or so in this world, is the most terrifying thing that devours demons, devils, and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but I'm excited to hopefully find out at some point.
Me too.
I mean, my personal theory on it is that the Chainsaw Devil was something else that transformed into the Chainsaw Devil once chainsaws were
Ooh,
created.
ooh,
But
that's a good theory.
it will have to remain to be seen. I'm excited to see it though. Or
Yeah.
maybe Chainsaw Devil's been this unknowable fear that subconsciously caused chainsaws to be created in the modern day. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we'll get a super flashback chapter one of these days, and it'll open the door on all that. Um, but yeah, we got a little bit more into Asa's trauma, her dark flashback involving like her cat, I guess, being drowned, was
Yep.
pretty messed up.
Oh yeah. I mean, much more messed up the chapter it happened than this chapter. She just kind of
Yes.
remembers it in the river, which she wouldn't have actually seen it in the river. I'm pretty sure, right? So that must be her imagining of it in the river.
Yeah, I think so. Because if I remember correctly, she was just asking the lady who like ran the orphanage what happened, and the lady like revealed that it wouldn't be fair if you're the only one that has a cat, and it was just like a really really dark like how they almost paint humanity as being as evil as the devils sometimes.
Oh yeah, and that's the best part of a series like this, in my opinion. And also, it's like it dives into Asa's trust issues because she really has
Yeah.
had major trust. Everyone she's sort of tried to get close to has betrayed her. You saw that in chapter 1, and you see that in this flashback, and it really is a good dynamic, I think, because Denji was kind of completely alone throughout most of his childhood, so he never really had an option to be betrayed like that, and he only got betrayed by Makima later. And Asa's sort of going down a different path, but kind of one that ties into that betrayal aspect a little bit more. So I'm glad to see it getting explored a bit here.
Yeah, I'd say even the series started with Denji getting betrayed by the mob bosses that were, I don't know
Yeah,
if
that's
they're
true.
necessarily keeping him alive, but I mean, he started completing jobs for them as a kid, and we pick up with him almost 5-10 years later. Um, So, I mean, he had some sort of relationship with them. It might not have been a very good one or healthy one, obviously, but uh, that all culminated in them being like, yeah, we're just going to kill you and your little dog, too. And that didn't go very well for them. Um, but yeah, it's almost building up more of a reason for Asa to go back to Denji, or at least try to mend that relationship, because Denji's consistently only been the only character that we've seen in this series that isn't like out there to screw over Asa or something like that. I'd say even with her friend, uh, Glasses girl who did the contract with the Justice Devil.
I've
Uh,
already started to forget her name.
is it
Yuko, I think it
Yuko?
is.
Yeah, I think it's Yuko. Um, Even Yuko like started to get some very unhealthy like friendship habits towards Asa, um, and Fujimoto just hasn't introduced another like kind character who's just wanting to be like Asa's friend or boyfriend.
Well,
Um,
Denji kind of does, but Denji now
oh
can't
yeah,
because
yeah, that's what I'm saying is like Denji seems to be the only one so far. So it seems like we're just building up to them eventually, forcing some sort of friendship or relationship uh, against the controlled devil's wishes.
yeah, which I'm sure will have no consequences.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, let me see. Got more of my notes here. Cat drowning was awful.
Yeah.
I just feel more
I
and more
mean,
bad for Asa. It's making me think that a lot of people think that Asa might get killed off at some point, and Fujimoto isn't afraid of killing off big characters. But just the more traumatic and the more like we spend, especially with this cat flashback, I'm just like, ah, man, I really think that Fujimoto is doing a fantastic job of building up two protagonists that we care a lot about simultaneously. Like just the pacing is really something a lot of series have struggled to do, even with like secondary and tertiary characters, let alone two like strong protagonists.
mm,
Um, so it's just a testament to how good the writing is on all this, I feel. Um, I guess Falling Devils. We've learned a little bit more about Falling Devil in this chapter. It seems like their ability only works if the person is like terrified of them,
mm,
which seems pretty easy to do, especially if they're able to introduce like traumatic or trigger traumatic memories in your head just from you being in the general area. Um, so it's definitely a very cool dynamic, and I don't think Asa's going to be able to get out of this unless she starts opening up to Yoru a little bit more, which this chapter kind of started to set that path.
yeah.
Um, but
Well,
yeah.
one more thing, not related to Asa and Yoru, although that is the
Yeah.
focus of the chapter. The sheer horror of like the last couple pages is just brilliant to behold. Like
Hmm.
that is the guy, the bald guy with sort of the clockwork orange eye
I was just going to
clamps,
say that.
being rolled in. That is that's a very powerful image and very frightening and horrifying image. So Fujimoto is showing, his mastery of horror here and
Yeah.
putting it to good use. So I'm excited to see what sort of twisted new things he comes up with the next chapter, which is coming out tomorrow apparently. So I'm very excited for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. With us recording on Mondays, it's kind of unfortunate that Chainsaw Man comes out on Tuesdays, but I almost feel it's a way to get us hyped and more excited for the next chapter that's coming out so soon. Um, but yeah, I feel like that's it's one thing that hopefully the next season of the anime is going to cover is a lot of people's favorite part of part one of Chainsaw Man is when they go to hell. Just because Fujimoto's like uh artistic ability to capture like the otherworldly like horrors and just terrifying character designs was it kind of presented itself in this chapter with the fallen devil going into the other dimension that opened up. It seems like they can just actively go in and out of hell, it seems like.
Mhm.
uh which is a big problem. That's not something that's been easy to do in this series so far. But getting to see the giant like worm creature, it was almost like a disturbing combination of a Bug's Life caterpillar and like a dune worm. um, very scary stuff. But Fujimoto is just much like H.R. Giger, the guy who created like the Xenomorph and Aliens and stuff like that. It's like I don't like looking at this, but I love looking at this at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just very unsettling, but like so unlike anything else you usually see in media. That it's a real treat to see that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, we got the pretty epic cliffhanger. The Falling Devil specifically calling out the Asa Yoru clash. So hopefully the next chapter starts off with that.
Yeah.
I don't see how Asa's going to be able to get out of this situation easily, especially be able to have. I mean, that I think it was 1 or 2 chapters ago. Yoru like approached it, and they're like, "Fuck this! I can't handle that. We don't have anything strong enough to deal with that." Um, it's almost like they would need a Denji spinal sword weapon in order to take over this foe. Because I feel like a primal evil is as powerful or even more scary than the chainsaw devil would be. But what would you like to see happen next, Ben?
I just want to see more of the Asa Yoru relationship, and see them actually directly confront the Falling Devil too. That'd be cool. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I just trust Fujimoto to take me wherever he takes me every week, and he hasn't let me down yet. So I'm just looking forward to the next chapter and the craziness that will ensue.
I completely agree, man. Well put. I think Fujimoto has excelled, and even moments where you're just like, where are you going with this? I'm not really sure what's happening right now. That haze is always dispelled within a chapter or two. And you're like, oh, I see what you're doing there. Well done, sir. Well done. And yeah, can't wait to see where he goes next. There's been a lot of like little mini arcs I feel throughout part 2, and each one has just helped build and build and build. So more power to you, Fujimoto. Keep doing. If you're watching, I know you're a fan. Keep on doing it, bud. But yeah, I think that's about everything I had on Chainsaw Man Chapter 124 Soup.
Yep.
Any other thoughts before I move into JJK, buddy?
I'm just excited for JJK because it's been a while since we've talked about it, and a lot of things have happened since then.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that'll wrap up our Chainsaw Man conversation. On to JuJutsu Kaisen, Chapter 218. If I remember correctly, the last time we talked to JJK on the podcast, Sukuna had actively taken over Megami's body and made short work of Mr. Pompadour, Laser Pompadour Man.
I'm not sure we had talked about that chapter, or maybe we did. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that was the last time we chatted about it. And since then, Sukuna has actively essentially set a beeline for apparently Megami's sister. And he, I got to ask, I'm hoping that you can clear some stuff up for me because last I remembered, Megami's sister was like somebody who was like bedridden, almost in a vegetative state.
Yeah, she had been infected by a curse and basically been bedridden by that. But then the calling game was like the fulfillment of that curse, which would then like it was the curse was basically set up to basically invite her to the calling game when it happened. So she was basically marked as being a calling game participant before the calling game started. But they're waiting for her to actually join it, so that way she'd be able to immediately get out. Once they had set the given rules in place that can enable someone to leave the culling game, which is why they were trying to do that throughout most of the culling game arc. But then when she joined the culling game, it was revealed that she was actually possessed by one of these ancient sorcerers, just like many other culling game participants were. And yeah, so that she's not really Megami's sister right now. She's Yorizu, who's an ancient sorcerer from way back when.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for clearing that up because that was definitely something I was like, wait, I didn't think Megumi's sister like could do anything and let alone stand up to Sukuna and survive as well as she has been. Um, but it makes so much more sense if she's, being possessed, sort of how we've seen so far throughout the series. But it's just kind of interesting that we have like these two characters, Megumi and his sister, um, fighting against one another, yet we have no inkling of those two characters in this fight. Like we,
Yeah.
we don't have Megami like yelling at Sukuna, and we're not getting any dialogue or perspective. That we know next to nothing about his sister because when we previously were introduced to her, I don't think she had any dialogue or was just in a vegetative state. Um, so this really just feels like things aren't going to go very well for her. I'm just really curious to see if Megumi is going to manage to break free and voice some sort of distrust or something. Or but with the bath that happened a couple chapters ago, we're supposed to believe that there's not really anything left of Megumi in there. And that's something that's really bothered me about Jujutsu Kaisen consistently is there's several characters that you're like, we haven't seen the body. I need the confirmation, but just the writing style just seems to have a lot of those like things lingering. So hopefully,
I,
when those moments do happen, they're like, oh my god, that's a good.
I mean, I think that's more just a factor of people being used to stories that are a bit less brutal. Because, like,
Yeah.
I mean, if we weren't conditioned to see most stories where like a character's body doesn't show up, you're like, oh, that character's going to come back, right? Like if we weren't conditioned by so many stories doing that, I don't think we'd really be having as many complaints as we do right now. Um, and
Yeah.
like to be fair, Nobara definitely might come back at some point. It's possible. The series hasn't shown her body and has been ambiguous about her death, but like I don't know, it just feels like she's dead.
Mhm.
And the sort of ambiguity around her death is just characters not wanting to talk about it because they don't want to, remember that she's dead. Um, but like, yeah, I feel like this is just a reader issue. Like the story itself isn't really at fault for that. It's more just other stories doing that that's causing that. And to be fair, if Yorozu does win here, then Megumi could potentially come back because the whole point for why Sukuna is doing this is to completely crush Megumi's spirit, like once and for all. But I'm personally fine with that, like with either outcome here, because Megumi
Mhm.
is essentially, he's essentially out of the story at this point. It's
Yeah.
just Sukuna. And if Megumi does reclaim control later and come back, then that would be fine. That would be a fun development. But I don't feel sort of on the edge of my seat as to like, oh, is Megumi going to say something in the next panel? Because
Right.
the story isn't really setting that up. It's, if he comes back later, he comes back later. But, I'm not waiting for him to come back anytime soon.
Right. And I'm not saying it's like bad storytelling to have those, ambiguity around the fate of certain characters and stuff like that. And I actually love your point of, we've been spoiled, not so much spoiled, but so many other series are afraid to kill off characters and, afraid to be a bummer. And so it is always really nice, I think, when a writer is able to successfully have that tension in there that I feel like so many other series have like lost that ability to do because you always feel like, oh yeah, they're gonna come back. It's gonna be a happy ending. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna be super upset if they announce that, oh yeah, these characters are dead and they're not coming back or anything like that. Um, it's definitely just sort of a hanging thread that may just fall off and we'll never get closure on it. But it's kind of an issue I think with Jujutsu Kaisen is just and it's something I brought up I think the last time we talked about it is it's consistently like a reactionary series. We don't have a lot of time. Like I'd say you brought it up with Nobara like possibly being dead. We haven't spent any time on characters like grieving and they're uneasy to talk about it because they've had a lot of stuff happen consistently ever since the end of the that arc, the Shibuya arc. Things have been pretty hectic since then. So
I don't necessarily think it's a reactionary series. I mean, I think that like, so I mean, if you look at like My Hero Academia, I think that's a reactionary series because in pretty much every arc, the characters are doing something, then the villains show up and they fight, right? And to some extent, that comes up in JuJutsu Kaisen, but it really hasn't been that way since Shibuya. Like Shibuya was the last time that happened, and then the protagonists have kind of been on the back foot since then. But like after Shibuya, all we got were like protagonists like doing things actively, which you could say is just one giant reaction to the events of Shibuya. But like the fact that it's like sort of gone through multiple arcs of the protagonists doing this makes me feel like it's not really quite fair to call the Culling Game arc sort of reactionary. Like Sukuna possessing Megumi and stuff was another event that happened, but and the protagonist did react to it, but it happened during a broader plan of the protagonists that they were putting into action. So like, I mean, people are going to react to things that happen in a story, but I don't think it necessarily makes it reactionary, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I'm not sure if I agree with it because I feel like a lot of these characters haven't really grown. It just feels like the style of the writing. I haven't really felt like a lot of these characters have developed much since they were like introduced because they're just consistently, being put up against like a life or death situation, and we haven't really had times to show that their personalities have like developed or grown.
I actually
That's
completely
just my
disagree
take.
with that. I mean,
Yeah.
like which characters do you feel haven't grown?
I'd say Itadori.
I feel like Itadori's grown a lot. Like you saw that in his fight against Sukuna, and like Itadori used to be a fun-loving sort of guy, and now he's sort of been transformed by hardship into this like sort of angry and just sort of traumatized guy.
Yeah, that is a valid point. It doesn't resonate so much for me, but yeah, I'm excited for more of those moments, and I hope we get a little bit more insight into Itadori's thoughts and processes towards everything, especially with the Megami situation going on. I mean, they are like two of the best friends or the closest friends in this series, and there was definitely anger and fear in his eyes when Sukuna took over Megumi, but I would like to hear more thoughts or kind of dive more into that. I just feel like the series has been big fight after big fight without much time to like breathe or hear what's going on with characters, like
Well,
feelings and stories and stuff like
I
that.
feel like a lot of the character writing in the series is show not tell,
Mm.
which is kind of ironic given its fights because a lot of the fights are kind of tell don't show in many ways with the power system. But like, I mean, I just think that it's Gege writing the characters as he's writing them and not really explaining it, like spelling it out 100% to the reader. You kind of just
Mm.
have to glean insights from small character moments as they happen,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I personally like. I enjoy it, but it's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I love it in series like One Piece where just there's so many character moments that are just very subtle, and there's plenty of times where I didn't pick up on it and then somebody much smarter than I am does an amazing YouTube video on it diving into all of it. I'm like, "Oh my god, this makes me appreciate it all that much more." And possibly someday this will happen for JJK. Well, I just have to find a good YouTuber who breaks it all down for me, I guess.
I feel like the issue with JJK YouTubers is that they focus pretty much entirely on the fights and power
Oh,
scaling,
really?
which is fair. I
Mm.
mean, the series, like that's arguably the series' biggest strengths are the fights and the powers and all that stuff. So it makes sense that that's what people care about mainly. But
Mm.
like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like the character writing in the series is often an underappreciated aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of cool fights and stuff like that, I feel like this chapter did very, very well. Especially, I think it was one of those things where I think Sukuna is better with Megumi's fighting style than Megumi is.
Yeah.
Just getting to see like all of his animal summons and how well he was able to switch back and forth between them in this. The bowl was pretty cool. It can only like go in a straight line, but the longer it charges, the more powerful it is. And getting to see Yorozu's like bug armor, for the lack of a better title for it, was pretty cool, and actually a really cool idea, I thought. Just taking all of the like lack of for the lack of a better phrase, the best abilities of like the insect kingdom, incredibly hard exoskeletons, being able to lift several times their own weight. That was pretty cool, just hearing all the research into like insects that character put into to develop this ability. And them just like consistently goading Sukuna to use his malevolent shrine, which I don't think would go very well for anybody in the situation.
Go well
But
for Sukuna.
yeah. Well, I really enjoy like his personality of like, I don't need it. I'm not going to let you get me to a situation where I need to use it.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, I wrote an article actually on like kind of related to this recently, where Sukuna hasn't even used the strongest ability of the 10 Shadows technique, and it's implied that he can, because the strongest summon from the 10 Shadows is Maharaga,
is
who's
that like the Cthulhu sort of thing at the end of the
no,
Shibuya arc?
well, it was in the Shibuya arc. It wasn't really like Cthulhu like. It was just
Okay.
sort of it was like just this hulking creature that Sukuna fought basically to a standstill, and the little head thing, the halo that appeared over Maharaga, has now appeared over Sukuna's head as Megumi. So like it's implied that he could bring that guy out later, and he'll probably do that before doing Malevolent Shrine. And given how Yorozu has struggled against these sort of lesser summons, I feel like they're not going to be able to defeat Maharaga unless sort of other people intervene here. But it'll be interesting to see how the fight goes from here, because then maybe Maharaga will like turn on Sukuna, because Maharaga is very difficult to control. But it'll be cool to see no matter what happens. But I also love Yorozu's insect armor, because it's a nice little sort of parallel sort of technique to Megumi's, because Megumi summons these mystical animals and Yorozu is covering herself with like animal armor and stuff. So I know that Yorozu isn't strictly related to Megumi, but like the fact that Megumi and his sisters are using powers that sort of parallel each other is very fun.
Yeah. And I enjoyed the little bit of context on the bug armor that she was using too. It was saying like during the time that cursed spirit was alive and thriving, and when they developed this ability, they used it to take out like at that time periods like
the 5
pretty much
empty
regime.
generals.
Yeah, the 5 empty generals who were apparently led by Uro.
Well, the Star Squad was.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure just the Star Squad was, because when we got Uro's sort of introduction way back when, mentioned that she led that. But like I'm excited to see this sort of 5 empty generals mentioned, but I'm also kind of disappointed, because we know the series is Gege is planning to wrap up the series in a year, and as we saw with My Hero Academia, that doesn't always happen. But I feel like it would have been cooler if they had this idea of like the 5 empty generals, to sort of incorporate them more into the culling game, so that like maybe in each colony, the big bad that they're trying to fight is like one of the 5 empty generals, ties in more to the history of the world, and like makes the culling game feel more unified than it was.
Yes.
And
I would like that.
It feels a bit like a missed opportunity here to mention it now. But maybe Gege will incorporate it later pretty well. Who knows? It's just I wish that the culling game had been sort of handled a bit better now in hindsight.
Yeah, because I definitely feel like it had its high and lows, but that's something that definitely would have, I think, benefited it to have that sort of connecting thread. Is this the first time that the 5 empty generals have been brought up?
I think with that title, yes. I have to
Okay.
go back to Iroh's introduction, but I'm pretty sure it just mentioned the Stars Squad when she was introduced. But yeah, if it had been mentioned earlier, I wish that it had been developed more earlier. But
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I think this is the first mention of it.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting that there was that name drop of Uro again. I mean, back when Sukuna first arrived and took out Pompadour Dude, I think we got like a panel of her reacting like, "Oh no, that's bad." So I think she could be showing up, but especially with Sukuna dropping an elephant from the sky, I think that kind of gave away their position. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else, possibly Euro, shows up in the next chapter. But um, yeah, that's about my notes on this chapter. Was there any other thoughts you had on JJK that you'd like to share before we move into plugs and recommendations? I know there's some other series that you wanted to talk a little bit about too. So
Yeah, if we have the time for them. I mean, I'll just mention here, like this series has been killing it ever since Sukuna sort of took over Megumi.
yeah,
It's been a lot more focused, and just seeing Sukuna run around and just do whatever he wants has been really fun to read. Even though it is very tragic that it's happening in Megumi's body, right? So I mean, I'm loving the series where it's currently at, and I'm excited to see where it goes to next. And I think that if you sort of stopped reading JuJutsu Kaisen, if you fell off during the culling game, I mean, you're unlikely to be at this point in the video, but I definitely recommend sort of diving back into the series and getting caught up again, because I feel like this current stuff it's focused, it's clearly in the end game, and you know, I feel like it's fixing a lot of the flaws that people leveled against the culling game. So definitely check it out if you're not already.
yeah, that was probably my biggest gripe with some moments of the culling games. I felt like it was unfocused. But I completely agree. I think Gege has fixed that with the last couple chapters, especially being able to focus on Sukuna, just unbridled, unleashed Sukuna. And it's been fun, especially seeing a character that, Gege has consistently like teased how scary and how powerful he is, and finally getting to like unleash him has been just cathartic. I feel. Um, but yeah, I think that'll wrap up our JJK chat. We'll see how the next chapters go, and we'll probably be talking about it again with the opportunity. But thanks for your thoughts on JJK, My Hero Academia, and Chainsaw Man.
Yeah, no problem.
I know previously when we were kind of thinking about what we wanted to talk about on the podcast, you'd brought up some other series on the Shonen Jump.
Oh yeah,
That
I mean I feel like a lot of lesser known series in Shonen Jump has just been killing it lately. I mean, one that I want to talk about, I guess, is Ginka and Gluna, because I feel like that's sort of winding down. I feel like it might be getting canceled soon, but it's just been killing it lately. And I feel like the author knows that it might be getting canceled soon, so it's doing some very interesting things. And I think that even if it does get canceled in the next couple of chapters, it'll be one of those series that I'll recommend to people regardless of that, just because of how interesting and cool it's been. And it's just really fun. It reminds me a lot of like early One Piece in a way. So if you like that sort of thing, definitely check it out. But it's just been a pleasure to read lately. Cypher Academy has been, off the wall crazy, which in the best way, which has just been really fun. If you love sort of JoJo's battles getting crazier and crazier with like, doing random activities in the battles, then definitely check it out, because it just basically is turning a bunch of convoluted and complex situations into shonen battles, and it's just been a joy to read. Akane Banashi has been just constantly great. Oda recommended it to his readers to read, and he did it for a reason, because it's a great series, very unique, very interesting. And
I know you've been recommending Akane Banashi for quite a bit, so I'm glad to hear that it's been keeping up with being worth recommending.
Oh yeah, the series is just great. I mean, it has a very niche sort of subject matter, because it's about like a Japanese performance art of Rakugo, which is like a comedy sort of thing. So like people might not initially be interested in that. They might think, oh, that's kind of a weird premise. Why would I care? But it's just very good. And I mean, it falls into like one of those sort of like performance mangas that have been popping up more and more lately. Like PPP was one of them. Kanabinashi is another. An anime that's coming out soon, Oshi no Ko, will be another. That should be pretty fun. But I don't think the first episode's aired yet. But that'll be fun. The manga for that's very interesting. So it's very cool to see. And I mean, I could go on for a long time about each of this series, but I'll end it with, if you like JuJutsu Kaisen, you should read Sakamoto Days, because the fights in Sakamoto Days are actually better than those in JuJutsu Kaisen, better choreographed. And that is like the highest praise I think a series can get. It is insanely cool fights. And also fun characters as well. So definitely check it out if you're interested. And
is that the series about the retired hitman who comes back to the fray? Okay.
Yeah. So and its latest arc is actually kind of similar to the Gojo's past arc. The second season, JuJutsu Kaisen, will be covering in July. So if you want sort of to relive that magic, check it out, because it's just great. It's really fun. And I cannot wait for it to get animated.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I too am incredibly excited for JuJutsu Kaisen's next season. It's going to be adapting, in my opinion, some of the best stuff to come out of JuJutsu Kaisen. And that's coming from somebody who thinks the first season of JJK was phenomenal and absolutely. I'm kind of surprised more people aren't into JuJutsu Kaisen after that season came out, but we'll see what happens after the second one comes out, because I think it's gonna blow some minds.
Yeah, and I think the second season will actually sort of fix a lot of the criticism that people had of the first, because I know like a lot of people were like, yeah, it's animated well, it's a decent story, but it's very standard, right? Doesn't really do anything that special. But the second season will get to an arc that will do something, a lot of things, very special.
Yeah, lots of special things.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like, if you reach this point in the video and you haven't actually read the Shibuya incident arc, then, sorry for spoiling a lot of stuff in our JuJutsu Kaisen discussion. But, I mean, it's just going to be great. So definitely check
Snape
it out.
kills Gojo. Oh, shit.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, man. I appreciate your recommendations. We'll be putting those in the description as well. But any other plugs you want to throw out before I go down my list?
I mean, my YouTube channel that I mentioned in the beginning, YGO from Zero. If you enjoy sort of retro formats of the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game or its history, definitely check it out. Very fun. So, but that's basically it for me. So if you got something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody you've heard on today's podcast are writers for Screen Rant. We write on the anime manga. I also do game reviews and previews and stuff like that. But definitely check out our works on Screen Rant. I had some pretty fun stuff come out recently regarding like One Piece, and one anime that I am very into right now that I am blown away. I hadn't really heard much about or gotten into is Hajime no Ippo. It's actually done by the same anime company, Madhouse, that did Trigun, One Punch Man, Hunter x Hunter, Hunter x Hunter. It's just a fantastic like shonen series that takes little to no time to get very, very exciting and well-built characters. And I'd say within the first 3 20-minute episodes, it builds a fantastic shonen rivalry and gets you pumping your fists in the air from pure excitement. So highly recommend Hajime no Ippo. The dub is free to watch on YouTube. I've been watching the sub on Crunchyroll, but I highly recommend Hajime no Ippo. I also do a YouTube series called Honzy and Friends. It's some comedic Let's Play videos with me and some good buddies. I just had an episode drop today with me and another Mega Manga Mondays guest who wasn't here with us today. Stephen Blackburn is actually Screen Rant's senior Sonic the Hedgehog comics lore expert. So it was a lot of fun playing the newest Sonic game with him and getting to hear some of the crazier Sonic the Hedgehog relationships and stories and stuff. But I would really appreciate it if you subscribed to Honzy and Friends, and of course this podcast on YouTube. But I also stream on Twitch as well. You can find me there on TheHonzy. I think all one word on there too. But I like to stream on Tuesdays and Fridays, talking video game news, and currently playing The Last of Us Part 2 on PlayStation 5. Oh boy, it's dramatic. And also just very enjoyable. But yeah, I think that'll about do it for this episode of Mega Manga Monday. And again, Ben, thank you for your time and opinions.
Always happy to discuss these series. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully I'll be able to have you on again next week. We'll have some new One Piece to talk about. We love talking some One Piece. And we'll see what other chapters are worth talking about next week.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah, same here. Well, I'll see y'all next time. And thanks again for watching. Peace.
Yeah, see y'all then.